and my heart stopped for 5 minutes.
So you were kind of legally dead for 5 minutes?
Well, no, I didn't flatline, but my heart did stop for 5 minutes.
He made us laugh like no one else. He was the king of funny sarcasm and had the sweetest, awkward charm. But behind those jokes and that lovable smile was a man quietly hurting, a pain he kept hidden from the world. Years after Friends ended, Matthew Perry finally spoke his truth, and it broke the hearts of his fans. Was it the crushing weight of fame, the pressure to be perfect, or a soul slowly breaking in silence? Chandler Bing was his mask, and just before he passed, that mask finally slipped away. Stay with us, because what he revealed changes everything we thought we understood about the legendary Perfect Sitcom, the show that made the world laugh. If you grew up watching the sitcom Friends in the early 1990s, you most definitely know Matthew Perry. It's about 6 friends living in New York City. They drank way too much coffee, had all kinds of drama, dated each other, and somehow always ended up sitting on the same brown couch at a coffee shop called Central Perk. Each character brought something unique to the group. Rachel was the pretty one with the perfect hair. Ross was always emotional and kind of whiny. Monica cleaned everything and acted like the boss of the kitchen. Joey was super lovable, but let's be honest, not exactly a genius. Phoebe was the weird, funny one you couldn't help but like. And then there was Chandler Bing. Chandler was the king of sarcasm. He was the awkward one who always cracked a joke at the worst possible time, and somehow it made everything funnier. People loved him. He didn't even have to speak. He'd just walk into a room with that confused, "What is going on?" face, and boom, everyone was laughing. Chandler was played by Matthew Perry, and Matthew, at that time, was going through difficult times. While we were out here quoting his jokes and laughing at his one-liners, he was silently struggling, and you'd never guess it. That's how good he was. He had this fast and funny way of talking that made you think everything was fine. Behind all the lights and applause, Matthew was dealing with addiction, insecurity, and a ton of pressure. And on top of all that, he still had to show up every day and be funny. Not just regular funny, Chandler funny. But honestly, that wasn't even half of what was going on behind the scenes. From the outside, Friends looked like the dream job with the non-stop laughs, millions of dollars, and popularity. It seemed perfect. However, behind the camera, things weren't exactly great. There were moments when rumors were swirling about what was going on the set, but Matthew stayed quiet for years, not until just before he died. He started opening up slowly. He started with small interviews and little comments here and there before he dropped the real tea. And honestly, what he revealed about his time on Friends changed the way a lot of us saw the show. But before we get into what he revealed, we need to rewind. We have to talk about who Matthew Perry was. Not the funny guy, nor the TV star, but the person. The little boy who just wanted to be okay. Because once you understand what he went through, that final truth he shared before his death will hit in a completely different way. Let's go back to where it all began. What dark secret from Matthew's past could have destroyed him before fame found him? And behind the laughter, was Matthew's world quietly unraveling? Let's dive deeper. The boy. Behind the smile. Matthew Langford. Perry was born on August 19, 1969, in Williamstown, Massachusetts. But as soon as he was born, life got complicated. His parents split up when he was still a baby. His dad, John Bennett Perry, was an actor and former model in California, while his mom, Suzanne Marie Morrison, a Canadian journalist, stayed in Canada and ended up working with Canada's Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau as the press secretary at that time. Matthew stayed in Ottawa with his mom, and while she was out being a boss lady in politics, he was always alone. He later said his childhood felt kind of lonely, and if we are being honest, we can feel that in who he became. He attended Rockcliffe Park Public School and Ashbury College, including a boarding school in Ottawa. He had 4 younger siblings on his mom's side, Caitlin, Emily, Will, and Madeline, and 1 on his dad's side, Maria. Matthew later said he felt like he didn't belong. His mom had started a new family, and he often felt like an outsider. In his words, he was that kid up in the clouds on a flight to somewhere else unaccompanied. According to his memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Things, Matthew began drinking, and it had become a regular habit by 18. But it wasn't all bad. He was good at tennis. He trained for hours a day and was one of the top junior players in Canada. People thought he might even go pro. Now, here's where it starts to get interesting. Even as a kid, Matthew had this thing. He could make people laugh. Like, he figured it out early. If he cracked a joke, people paid attention. They looked at him. And let's be real, when you're a little boy feeling kind of invisible, getting people to laugh is like a superpower. It made him feel seen. But the flip side is that the humor wasn't always coming from a happy place. Sometimes, the jokes were just a cover, a little mask to hide what he truly feels inside. However, things changed when he packed up and moved back to Los Angeles to live with his dad at the age of 15. He started taking acting classes, and surprisingly, he was very good at it. By the way, having a father who is an actor helped him. Also, moving to Los Angeles wasn't all red carpets and Hollywood glam. He was in a brand new school, trying to make friends, and still dealing with that weird, empty feeling inside. And even though he was slowly starting to find his place, at just 14, alcohol started creeping into his life. This habit followed him for decades, becoming Chandler, the role that saved and broke him. We all know that being famous isn't always easy, especially in Hollywood. A lot of people can't handle it. But somehow, Matthew Perry didn't let it break him. When he moved back to Los Angeles full-time, he was still young, funny, and charming, and he could make pretty much anyone laugh. People in the TV world noticed him right away because he had something special. He wasn't super good-looking like a movie star, and he wasn't silly like a class clown. He was just the right mix of smart and funny, and that worked for the producers. It didn't take long before Matthew started getting small acting gigs. Even though they were not huge yet, it was a start. His first real break came in 1987 when he got a part in a show called Second Chance. However, the show only lasted one season due to low ratings and poor reviews. A common outcome in the fast-paced world of TV, but it helped him get noticed. After that, he showed up in a bunch of classic shows from the 80s and early 90s, like Growing Pains, Charles in Charge, and even a movie with River Phoenix called A Night in the Life of Jimmy Reardon. Finally, he auditioned for Friends in the early 90s, which he almost didn't audition for because he was filming another show at the time. The producers had already found most of the cast, but there was one role they just couldn't lock down: Chandler Bing. They needed someone quick-witted, funny, sarcastic, and lovable. At that time, Matthew was already tied up filming a sci-fi comedy called LAX 2194, but unfortunately, LAX 2194 flopped hard and never aired. So Matthew was finally free to audition for Friends. And the moment he walked in and read for Chandler, he and everyone knew the role was meant for him. In 1994, Matthew Perry became Chandler Bing, and when Friends came out that fall, it blew up fast. Everyone was watching it. By the second season, the cast couldn't go anywhere without getting mobbed by fans. They were on magazine covers, talk shows, and red carpets everywhere. And Matthew became one of the most famous faces in the world. But here's the twist most people didn't see. While his career was taking off, his personal life was quietly falling apart. Later, Matthew said, "When Friends was at its peak, I was at my lowest." And he wasn't just being dramatic. He was going through a private struggle. He turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms during tough times. He'd show up to work feeling awful, still manage to say some of the funniest lines on TV, and then go home feeling empty inside. And the saddest part was that no one knew what was going on with him. But don't get it wrong, his talent never went away. He gave us some of the best Chandler moments ever, like, "Could I be wearing any more clothes?" Or, "I'm not great at advice, and can I interest you in a sarcastic comment?" Those iconic lines are part of pop culture now. Outside of Friends, he did movies like Fools Rush In, The Whole Nine Yards, and 17 Eat Again. Some did well while some didn't, but he kept working. He tried more serious roles in shows like Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, but nothing ever came close to Friends. He had the money and fame and was living the dream, but none of that fixed his feelings. And slowly, that quiet struggle started to affect every part of his life. So while the world saw Chandler Bing as the funny, lovable guy, they didn't see the real Matthew, who's quietly struggling behind the scenes. And that struggle got harder when it came to love, loss, and everything going on when the cameras weren't rolling. What happens when you can't break free from a habit that's breaking you? How close did Matthew come to losing everything, and what nearly ended it all? Stay with us as we delve deeper. Love, loneliness, and the search for something real. Matthew made millions of people laugh. Fame gave him money, awards, and fans all over the world. But it also brought a lot of pressure, self-doubt, and a deep feeling of being alone, something he dealt with for most of his life. At the heart of it all, Matthew was just someone who wanted love. He wanted a real connection, someone who saw him, not the fame, not the jokes, not Chandler Bing, just Matthew. One of the most talked about relationships Matthew had was with Julia Roberts. They connected in 1996 when she guest starred on Friends. At the time, she was already a huge star, and he was quickly becoming one too. People were excited to see them together, but it only lasted for a short while because, at the time, Matthew was struggling. He didn't feel like he was good enough for her. In his book, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, he shared how scared he was. Dating Julia Roberts had been too much for me. I was always sure she would leave me. Why wouldn't she? I wasn't enough. I was broken. In the end, he ended the relationship, not because he didn't care, but because he was afraid of getting hurt. And sadly, this wasn't just a one-time thing. Matthew said he often pushed people away before they got too close. He found it hard to trust, and deep down, he didn't always believe he deserved love. Another important relationship in his life was with actress Lizzie Kaplan. They were together for about 6 years in the 2000s, but they kept it very private. Years later, Matthew spoke about it and admitted that he wished he had asked her to marry him. With that one, I think I was afraid, he wrote in his book. It was one of those relationships that meant something to me, and I let it go because I was scared. Scared of commitment, of messing it up, of not being enough. It didn't end there. In 2018, Matthew started dating Molly Hurwitz, a literary manager. At first, they kept their relationship pretty quiet, but in 2020, he proposed. He even told People magazine, "I decided to get engaged. Luckily, I happened to be dating the greatest woman on the face of the planet at this time." It felt like a big step for him, like maybe things were finally starting to settle down. But in 2021, they called off the engagement. Matthew gave a short, honest statement. "Sometimes things just don't work out, and this is one of them. I wish Molly the best." Even though Matthew tried many times to find love, he stayed single in his last years. He often said he wanted to be a dad. More than fame, more than even his career, he wanted a family. In interviews, he said he felt like maybe that chance had passed, but he still hoped. He made us laugh when we needed it most, but behind the scenes, Matthew Perry was quietly fighting for his life. In February 2001, Matthew had to stop working on Friends for 2 months. He went to a special treatment center to get help with problems he was having with medicine and alcohol. He later said that because of these struggles, he didn't even remember 3 years of working on Friends. In 2018, his health took a critical turn. Matthew spent 5 months in the hospital after his colon burst, a problem caused by his long-term use of strong pain medicines. He was so sick that he went into a coma for 2 weeks and had to use a special bag to help with his digestion for 9 months. At one point, doctors described his chances of survival as extremely low. They had to connect him to a machine that helped his heart and lungs work. 2 years later, while he was getting help in a rehab center in Switzerland, Matthew was still struggling a lot. He took strong medication every day and had rigorous treatments that made his health problem worse. During a procedure, he experienced a serious complication that temporarily stopped his heart. And when doctors had to bring him back, he broke 8 ribs. He spent millions of dollars on his treatments, and he went through 14 stomach surgeries, 15 rehab stays, and therapy twice a week for 30 years. But even after cheating death more than once, peace still felt out of reach. With all the tough times and heartbreak, Matthew never gave up. He wanted love and healing, and more than anything, he wanted his story to help others feel less alone. This brings us to the heartbreaking moment. Wasn't he finally okay? What happened that day? He had survived the unthinkable, so why did it end like this? The goodbye no one saw coming. On October 28, 2023, something very sad happened. The world woke up to news no one was ready for. Matthew was found unresponsive in his hot tub at his home in Los Angeles. The police said there was no foul play, and no illegal substances or alcohol were found there. The news called it peaceful, but for everyone who loved him or was touched by his work, it felt far from peaceful. That night, social media exploded with people sharing their sadness. Fans, celebrities, and even leaders from around the globe posted clips of Chandler's funniest moments and quotes from Matthew's book, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. Even those who never met him felt a deep sense of loss. He wasn't just an actor on a show. For 10 years, he led us into his life through Friends, making people laugh even when things were hard. He made sarcasm a joke. Everyone's awkwardness was something we could relate to. In a small, private funeral in Los Angeles, friends and family gathered together to bid him farewell. His death hurt even more, because just a year before, in 2022, he had shared more than ever before. His book told the truth about the millions he spent trying to heal, the time his colon burst from years of struggles, and how he had fought through all that. And for many, it felt like maybe he was finally going to be okay. After Matthew's passing, toxicology reports helped us understand what happened. A medication sometimes used to help with depression. Though Matthew had been clean from opioids and alcohol for a long time, he was getting ketamine treatments under a doctor's care. Sadly, the amount in his system was so high that it stopped his heart. What was supposed to help him ended up being his hardest battle. His family shared a simple message. We are heartbroken by the tragic loss of our beloved son and brother. Matthew brought so much joy to the world, both as an actor and a friend. The Friends cast, who had been like family to him for years, was deeply shaken. They said, "We were more than just castmates. We are a family." There is so much to say, but right now, we're going to take a moment to grieve and process this loss. It was the first time one of the 6 was gone, and the pain was very real. In the months before he passed, Matthew started opening up in ways we hadn't seen before. Beyond his memoir, he began sharing the real, raw side of what life was like behind the scenes of Friends. Not just about fame or his struggles, but the things no one talked about out loud. People close to him say he was working on a new project, maybe a documentary or another book, to finally tell the whole story he had kept hidden for years. It was a trying time for his fans all over the world. But before the goodbye, before the heartbreak, he left us something more, his truth. In his own words, he pulled back the curtain on what went down during those Friends years, the part we never got to see. How did someone who made us laugh so much carry so much pain inside? What was going on behind those bright lights and endless laughs? Why did Matthew feel so alone, even when the whole world knew his name? The truth behind the curtain no one saw coming. For many years, Friends looked like the perfect TV show. The 6 actors seemed like a real family, and fans all over the world loved their stories. But behind the cameras, things weren't always perfect. Matthew had a secret only a few people knew. That secret made his time on Friends much harder than anyone realized. Before he died, he spoke honestly about those years. He didn't just talk about his well-known struggles with pills and alcohol. He also shared the deep pressure, loneliness, and fear that came with being famous on such a massive show. Matthew explained the pressure to always be on, Every day on set felt like performing on stage. A live audience was watching and waiting to laugh at every line. And if they didn't laugh, he felt like he had failed. He said, "It was like walking on a tightrope. You had to be funny and perfect every second. No one saw how tired I was. I was scared to ask for help." But it wasn't just about being tired. Matthew admitted he often felt invisible. Even though Friends made him famous, he felt overshadowed by his co-stars. Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox were adored for their beauty and love stories. Matt LeBlanc was the charming ladies' man. Lisa Kudrow had quirky, unforgettable lines. "I loved those guys and girls," Matthew said, "but I always felt like Chandler was the sidekick, like I wasn't the star." Feeling less than made his inner struggles worse. He turned to alcohol and pills to hide his anxiety and self-doubt. While the world saw the jokes and smiles, inside, he was just trying to hold on. Now, here's the kicker. Friends was one of the richest TV shows ever made. At first, it didn't cost much to make. It was about $1 million per episode in the early seasons. But as the show got more popular, the budget exploded. By the end, it cost around $10 million just to make a single episode because the actors were getting paid more and more. In the final seasons, each of the 6 stars made about $1 million per episode. Yes, you heard that right. They were each making about $20 million a year, and the show itself made a fortune. Friends pulled in close to $1 billion during its original run. Even today, it earns millions every year from reruns and streaming. Everyone involved became very rich. But here's the truth. Even with all that money and fame, life on set wasn't always glamorous. In the early days, the 6 stars had to live in small, shared apartments near the studio to stay close to work. They weren't living like Hollywood royalty yet. Sometimes they had cheap meals, long, exhausting days, and even arguments over silly things like who got the best dressing room. Matthew once said, "We were like a real family, but families fight sometimes." And it wasn't always easy behind the scenes. His struggles with substances made it hard, not just for him, but for everyone around him. Sometimes he showed up late or not at all. The producers didn't want the public to know anything was wrong. They wanted to keep the show looking perfect. Matthew felt stuck. He needed help, but had to smile and perform like everything was fine. Matthew said, "I was a mess sometimes. People didn't know how to help me. Some got upset or angry." But even when things were hard, his friends' castmates never gave up on him. They cared about him and wanted him to get better. "We were like a family," he said, and families stay together. Working on the show for 10 years was not easy. It was like running all the time without a break. Matthew got very tired, and it made him feel sad and worn out. Even though the show looked happy and fun, Matthew said the actors sometimes felt lonely. After filming, they would go home and deal with their problems. Matthew felt alone a lot, even when he was with people. On set one day, Matthew slipped on a wet surface and sustained a serious back injury. It was hard for him to stand, but he kept working anyway because they had to finish the show. The other actors and workers helped him, but it showed how tough their job was. There was also a special room just for the 6 main actors. They used it to rest, talk, play games, and joke around. Sometimes they argue too, like real friends do. One time, Matt LeBlanc joked that he got more fan mail than the others, and it started a fun little rivalry. Matthew laughed and said that maybe Chandler Bing was like the extra friend, but he always had a funny comeback ready. In addition, one very important moment Matthew shared happened during the 7th season of Friends. His struggles were getting worse. One day, after filming a hard scene, he started crying on set. The cameras were off, but the crew saw it. He thought they would laugh or be upset, but instead, his co-stars came over and gave him hugs and support. He said, "It was the first time I felt safe enough to say I needed help." That moment didn't fix everything, but it gave him a little hope and reminded him that people cared. Before he passed away, Matthew wanted everyone to know that Friends wasn't just a funny TV show. It was made by real people who had real problems and real love for each other. He wanted fans to remember that even people who smile and make jokes can feel sad inside. Matthew said, "If my story helps even one person feel less alone, then sharing it is worth it." Was his story all about struggles, or was there hope at the end? Did he finally find the peace and healing he wanted before he passed away? Let's uncover his last days and legacies. Final days and lasting legacy. In his last days, Matthew was quieter than usual, but also more open with those close to him. He spent more time with family and good friends, cherishing moments he hadn't always noticed before. He talked honestly about his past mistakes, his hopes for the future, and the things he wished he could change. Despite his personal battles, Matthew remained committed to helping others. He became an important voice for addiction awareness. Using what he had learned from his struggles, he wanted to help people avoid the pain he went through. He supported many charities, gave speeches, and shared his story so others wouldn't feel alone. One charity he supported was the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation, a well-known addiction treatment center. Matthew also worked with the Red Cross and Amnesty International, helping people beyond his struggles. He gave time and money to these causes, showing how much he cared about making a difference. Matthew knew life was fragile. He once told a close friend, "If I don't get sober, I might not make it. But if I do, maybe I can help others live." His sudden death shocked fans and friends everywhere. But those who knew him best say he faced his battles with real courage, right up to the very end. Matthew Perry's legacy is much more than just the laughs he gave millions as Chandler Bing. He won several awards and nominations, including a Primetime Emmy nomination for his role on Friends. He also earned praise for his work on shows like The West Wing and The Odd Couple, proving he was a talented actor beyond comedy. But his greatest achievement was his honesty about his struggles with addiction and mental health. By sharing his story openly, Matthew helped break the silence around these difficult topics. He showed the world that even the brightest stars can have nights, and that it's okay to ask for help. Today, Matthew's story continues to inspire thousands of people. His memoir, interviews, and the truths he shared keep shining a light on the things often hidden behind celebrity life. "When I die," Matthew once said, "I want to be remembered as someone who lived well, loved well, and helped people." And in the end, that's exactly who he was. What do you think Matthew's final truth means for the legacy of Friends? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, like and subscribe to our channel. If you want more interesting videos like this, click on the video showing on your screen.